The third round match between Sinner and Shapovalov at the 2025 US Open revealed two things to me. First of all, Yannick Sinner is human. He's not going to play flawless tennis every time. He can make mistakes as well. Secondly, Denis Shapovalov is an incredible talent. In my opinion, he should be ranked a lot higher. He was seeded number 27 in this tournament. He had to play Yannick Sinner in the third round because of his low ranking. However, this match revealed why Shapovalov is not ranked higher. So in the first set, Shapovalov is playing very aggressive. Yannick Sinner in the post-match interview said that he was leaving the ball short. Normally, it's Yannick Sinner that overpowers opponents, but in this first set, especially early on, it was more Shapovalov who was overpowering Sinner. He got a break. He was serving for the match at 5-3. And down 15-30, this is where Sinner woke up. And this point featured possibly the best rally in this whole tournament that Yannick Sinner won with a spectacular two-handed backhand lob. So Shapovalov gets broken in this game. Both players hold, and it's Yannick Sinner serving at 5-6 to stay in the set. And interestingly, at 30-all, Yannick Sinner plays a passive point, and Shapovalov hits an inside out forehand winner. It gives himself a set point at 30-40, where Yannick Sinner proceeds to throw in a double fault. And this was surely shocking to me. Now, early in the second set, Shapovalov continues to play exceptional tennis. He's up 3-2, and he has a mini window on the Sinner serve at 15-30. He can't convert. And in the second set, Yannick Sinner does clean up his game quite a bit, and he ends up breaking Shapovalov and wins that second set 6-4. Now, I thought that Sinner was going to open up his game and that this was going to be an easy rest of the match for Sinner, but it wasn't, because Shapovalov continued to play very aggressive. He continued to serve well, and he broke Sinner and was up 3-0. With Sinner serving 30-40, Shapovalov had a break point to go up 2 breaks in the third set. And here's where the match got very interesting, because he couldn't convert that break point. And Shapovalov was serving at 3-1, and he had game point at 40-30, couldn't convert that one. And at deuce is where the match flipped. Sinner's shoelace broke, and there was a little bit of a delay to the game. Sinner had to change shoes. And Shapovalov, who has one of my favorite service motions on the ATP Tour, an absolute beautiful rhythm. He has a very aggressive loading position, somewhat reminiscent to Pete Sampras. He turns his chest towards the back fence. I not only like the Shapovalov serve, I love his one-handed backhand, and he also has a very stylish forehand. He is a fun player to watch, and he was serving well up to that point. However, once Sinner changed his shoes and there was a delay, Shapovalov lost the confidence on his serve and started missing a lot of first serves. He ends up getting broken in this game. Sinner holds, and that game at 3-all revealed why Shapovalov has issues when it comes to consistency. When he's on top of his game, like he was at the tournament in Dallas where he won, Shapovalov is capable of doing big things in a game of tennis. However, often it is the mental game that lets Shapovalov down. And we got to witness it in that game at 3-all, where he basically got himself out of this match. In this game, down low 15, he hit 2 consecutive double faults. And it is possible that he received some instruction on his serve from his coach in this game, because he was playing on the side where the coach was sitting. And Shapovalov sarcastically twice in this game gave a thumbs up to the coach for the tip that he received. And he ended up fighting in this game, bringing it back to deuce, but eventually double faulting on break point. And then again, he gave a sarcastic thumbs up to the coach. So I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about on-court coaching, but not on-court coaching in general. I've done this in several other videos that you can check out, but more specifically, I want to talk about instructions on the serve, because this is where it gets very tricky. Patrick McEnroe shared a very interesting story when he was Davis Cup captain. Andy Roddick told him, "You can tell me whatever you want, but don't say anything about my serve." And I know this might sound brutal, but I understand where Andy's coming from. One of the greatest servers in the history of the game. And what can happen when you start thinking about technique, or if somebody starts talking to you about technique, that simple thought of technique can get you out of your serve rhythm. You can start missing serves. This is how intricate the service motion is, because we're dealing with the fastest stroke in tennis. Guys are serving 130 with no problem. And you have to have the motion down if you want consistency. Now, the kick serve is a little bit different and is another complex topic that we can touch upon in another video. But nevertheless, too much instruction can destroy your serve in a match. So it's best to not think about technique and use other methods where you can bring your serve percentages up. This has to deal with your intention on the serve, what type of serve that you're hitting, and so on. And even some technical adjustments can help. I'm not saying that all technical adjustments are bad, but generally speaking, if things are working, just leave the serve alone and continue to serve. Now, what about the case where you're not serving well? Would instruction help you to regain your serve? Certainly, if the instruction is good, and if it's a technical instruction that's of a simple nature, this can certainly help. But I've seen many cases where a player is already serving poorly, and then the instruction comes in, and now the player is serving even worse. And this was certainly the case for Shapovalov. Now, I'm not blaming the coach at all. I'm not sure what the instruction was, but Shapovalov for sure got himself out of a match because not only was he angry at himself, but he started blaming the coach, and he completely destroyed himself mentally in that game. And once Sinner held serve at 5-3, Shapovalov proceeded to lose his serve again. So he lost 6 consecutive games in this set from being up 3-0 and break point. As good as Sinner is, he certainly can win 6 games in a row against a lot of guys on tour, but it wasn't really the top level Sinner that we saw today. He was making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. He did start playing better towards the end for sure. So Shapovalov blew a golden opportunity to go up 2-1 against Jannik Sinner, and he did that by playing exceptional tennis. Now, once he lost that third set 6-3, he didn't tank. He still held serve after getting broken in the fourth, but you can tell that he was out of the match from a mental standpoint. I made a video yesterday talking about Djokovic's incredible superpower, that he's able to turn negative things that happen to him in a match into positive things almost immediately. He doesn't let negative emotions linger. This is what Djokovic has talked about in many interviews. Yes, he gets angry, he screams at his box, but he refocuses on the match immediately on the next point, and he can turn negative into positive, not only better than anyone else on tour, but also faster. And that is exactly what Denis Shapovalov needs to do if he wants to maximize his potential. And I do think that his potential is sky high. Now, speaking of improvements in the mental game, I have to talk about Rublev, because there's a reason why I picked him to go into the semifinals of the US Open. I'm seeing a different Rublev. I think Marat Safin is helping him a lot. And the work that Rublev has done is very inspiring for other players. I think a few other players on tour that are struggling with similar things should learn from Rublev. If you guys want to know in more detail the mental struggles that Rublev faced and what he has done to overcome them, there's a documentary on the ATP Tour YouTube channel you can watch. And I'm definitely seeing a different Rublev these days. He played really well in Cincinnati, losing to Carlos Alcaraz 7-5 in the third. And in today's match against Wong, he certainly wasn't at his absolute best, but he won the important points and gritted out a tough 5-set victory. On to the next third round match, and I was very surprised to see Felix Auger-Aliassime take out Zverev. And I've heard people say that Aliassime is having a bad year, but his year outside maybe the biggest tournaments has been quite good. He won a couple of titles. He made a lot of semifinals. He just hasn't found his best tennis at the most important tournament. But he found his absolute best tennis against Zverev, who on the other hand played really well after losing in the first round of Wimbledon to Rinder Nesh by reaching 2 consecutive semifinals at the ATP Masters 1000 level. So I had Zverev winning this match, but Zverev was far away from his best. This was one of the worst matches that I've seen from him, especially in the third and fourth set. Now, all credit to Aliassime, who played extremely aggressive, especially with his forehand, hitting a tremendous amount of winners. But this match flipped in the second set tiebreak. Zverev won the first set 6-4. He found himself up set point in the tiebreak 6-5. Aliassime gave him a second serve, and Zverev, very characteristic for this match, hit the two-handed backhand in the half court, and Aliassime pounded the forehand. Overall, Zverev was passive in this match, especially in important stages of that second set, and then in the third and fourth set, also he was making some very uncharacteristic mistakes, missing balls by a lot, by 1 meter, 2 meters, and he simply was not aggressive enough. The forehand winner discrepancy between Aliassime and Zverev was something like 28 winners for Aliassime to 3 winners for Zverev. I'm not sure of the Aliassime number, but it was somewhere in the 20s. But I'm very sure that Zverev only hit 3 winners through the entirety of the match. So way too passive, negative body language, and he might have been hurt because he was touching his hamstring. So that could be an explanation why Zverev delivered this performance. But fact is that now that he's lost in the third round of the US Open, he missed out on the opportunity to make it into the semifinals and gain some points from last year because this is where he lost to Fritz in the quarters. The section of the draw was quite open, and Zverev was the favorite to make it into the semis and face potentially Sinner. But now Zverev has to defend a tremendous amount of points. He won the Paris Masters last year. He reached the semifinals of the ATP finals, and then of course he reached the finals of the Australian Open. A great opportunity for Aliassime to make the semifinals of the US Open. Again, he can for sure beat Rublev. He can also beat potentially Alex de Minaur in the quarterfinals, but I'm sticking to my prediction prior to the tournament, and I have Rublev going all the way into the semis. For me, the best match of today and possibly the entire tournament was the Bublik-Paul match. I like watching both of these guys play. Tommy Paul for his athleticism and court coverage, and just stylistically a nice player to watch. And I like to watch Bublik for the tremendous feel that he has over the ball. Him and Alcaraz have the best drop shot in the world. Bublik hit 38 drop shots against Paul, one of the best movers on the ATP Tour, and won 28 out of 38. So the drop shot is an unbelievable weapon that Bublik possesses. But another weapon is his serve. Bublik has not dropped serve this entire tournament. And the match against Paul went 5 sets, and Bublik was able to hold serve through the entirety of the match. And this is a completely different Bublik that we're seeing now. He's maximizing his potential as a tennis player. He's locked in mentally. There are no usual ups and downs. There's no showmanship. And most importantly, for his service games, there are no underhand serves, because you're not going to be holding serve the entire tournament if you're doing underhand serves, which is a very poor tactic that only works in surprise situations. So in other words, you do it every now and then, it's okay. But if you're going to do underhand serves and be a crowd pleaser, so to speak, you're going to pay the price. And Bublik is for sure not doing that. He's locked in and playing the best tennis of his life. Tommy Paul was completely gassed in the 5th set. He was possibly dealing with an injury and also the effects of having played another brutal 5-set match a few days earlier that also went deep into the night. And Bublik was fresh. Him losing that 4th set in the tiebreak didn't affect him that much. He was clearly the fitter player in the 5th set, and Tommy Paul didn't have much left in the tank, which brings up something that I've been talking about this whole week. I do think it's an advantage for Bublik not having played any tournaments prior to the US Open, and I think he's going to be a very dangerous opponent for Jannik Sinner. Does he have a chance to beat him? I've heard reports that the US Open courts are playing very slowly, and the slower the court, the less chances for Bublik. I think the Halle tournament where Bublik took out Sinner is one of the fastest courts in the world. But on a slow surface, Jannik Sinner will find ways to get into the Bublik service game. But don't get me wrong, this version of Bublik, without the crowd pleasing, he's a guy that's very difficult to break. One of the best servers on tour. A guy who hits his second serve very aggressively, so he doesn't give you a lot of rhythm. And he's also a guy that plays very fast, so he doesn't take a lot of time in between his serves. He goes through his service games rather quickly, and that also can be very difficult on the returner. Another thing that makes Bublik so difficult to play is that he has this amazing feel, but he can also hit the ball so incredibly fast from the back of the court. And also the fact that there's a discrepancy in shape on his forehand and backhand. So the backhand is very flat and very straight, and the forehand has some good shape on it. Now, most players have less RPMs on the two-handed backhand compared to their forehands, but in Bublik's case, especially when it goes down the line with that backhand, that ball is very straight, and on the other hand, on the forehand, he hits it very hard and heavy. On top of all that, like I already said, he has potentially the best drop shot in the world. So Bublik has the repertoire to absolutely destroy your rhythm and also suffocate you mentally because he plays very fast, doesn't spend a lot of time in between points. And if he continues playing like this, as I've been saying this whole year, Bublik is going to be in the top 10. If you think of the most dangerous opponents for Jannik Sinner on the ATP Tour, of course, it's Carlos Alcaraz. To some extent, you could say Novak Djokovic, even though Jannik Sinner has beaten him a bunch of times in a row since that 2023 Davis Cup match. But I would definitely put Bublik on the list of most dangerous players that Jannik Sinner faces, not only for the fact that he's beaten him in Halle, but he possesses the type of game that can put Jannik Sinner under a lot of pressure and that can also break his rhythm. Denis Shapovalov in today's match proved that. So if Jannik Sinner catches a bad serving day where his first serve percentage is low, if he drops serve and the other guy is serving big and dictating play, there is a chance for a guy like Bublik to get the win over Sinner. But Jannik Sinner is a champion, and he will likely find his best tennis when it matters the most, towards the late stages of the most important tournaments. And if he does that, the advantage goes to Sinner, and I do believe that Sinner will come through this one. It might be tough though. I want to give Naomi Osaka credit because she was criticized a lot for the way she behaved in her final loss in Montreal against Mboko. And her next opponent in the fourth round, as I predicted, is going to be Coco Gauff. And I do believe that Osaka will win this match. When Coco Gauff was 15 years old and she faced back then the number one player in the world, Osaka, Naomi was so nice to Coco and she let her join the on-court interview, and Gauff was in tears. And the way Gauff spoke about Osaka, you can see that Naomi Osaka cares about Coco Gauff. And as she said in her post-match interview today, she sees her as her little sister.